So hi, One of the Noise podcast. I'm Shane,
I'm Glory.
and we're here with,
Joshua from Banks Arcade.
and we're asking some questions today about their upcoming album, Future Lovers. So congrats on that, by the way. How do you feel about the response to the announcement so far?
Yeah, it's been really awesome. We've been sitting on the album for quite some time now. I think we finished it about 2 years ago.
Oh wow!
So being able to finally get it in other people's ears is definitely very exciting, and especially over here in Australia, there's been a lot of buzz about it. So it's really exciting times for us.
Hell yeah! I was listening to the album today, blown away. It's so fucking good.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you.
I agree. But when you say you've had it done for like 2 years, are you talking about like you've had the masters for 2 years, or you've had it like kind of like in process for 2 years?
No. We've had the masters for 2 years. So we went back home. We're all from New Zealand, and we'd been in Australia. And when COVID started to really pop off, we were like, okay, we need to go home. So we went back to our family homes, and we actually wrote the album during the first set of lockdowns, and then recorded it at the end of that. And then when we came back over here, we had all the videos done, all the masters, everything. So it's kind of just been sitting there waiting for the right time. So yeah, it's definitely been a test of patience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. My God.
Usually I ask this question later on, like when someone says they've been sitting on the album for a while, but since we're talking about it, I'm going to ask it now. Do you still like feel connected to the songs, like despite sitting on them for so long?
Yeah, I think this one is a unique one because it's definitely an album that, as I was writing it, I was very self-aware that it was going to, at the very least, alert us to the industry and start opening up doors and opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily sitting there thinking, man, this is going to be the biggest album of all time, but I knew that it was going to change things from where we were to now. And I also think that the process of writing this album was very much a process that formed the identity of the band and helped to form some of the processes that we've now taken over into our further projects and recordings that we're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it'll always have a fond memory for me, and I'll always have some form of connection. But you're right, as a musician, you kind of end up in that position where you write something. When you're writing it, you feel so intensely connected to it, and you love it so much, and it expresses exactly how you feel at the time. Then by the time it comes out, you can lose that and be like, man, I don't even like this song anymore, and no one's even heard it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. God. All right. So is there any meaning behind the album title or cover art?
Yeah, so the cover art is designed by this guy called Pat Fox. He's amazing. He's worked with so many cool bands. Like, you would recognize, if you know bands like North Lane or other bands over here that he's done stuff for, that you'd see album arts and be like, oh yeah, that's iconic. He's really, really fucking cool. And I talked to him a lot about the album, and one of the things about this album is it's extremely eclectic and darts between different styles and different kind of voices and emotions. And when I'm writing, I almost like go into like different characters in my head to really express that particular thing that I want to say. And so we talked about that at length when we were working on the design and doing all the concepting. And he actually, the model that we used is the same model that we used for the cover of our EP Fever Dreams, which was what the release that had kind of taken us to this point. And so we basically just had her styled in different ways to express those different voices that come out on the album, with the character in the center kind of being the writer or the person that's in the middle of it all, going into these different characters. And in terms of the name of the album, the album had initially been formed as a concept album, and it was following like a pretty close story that I'd outlined as I was writing. And then I realized during the process that it was actually quite personal, and I was actually just kind of writing from my own head, but using this character as a vessel. So we changed tact, and I think that name stuck because it still applies in some ways, but I don't think there's like a specific definition that I can give to it now, other than the fact that it's like the album in and of itself is anticipating something that's going to happen in the future.
Okay. So you said you were writing concept record and then obviously kind of scrapped that idea. Did you shuffle the songs around so that it like wasn't fitting into that concept anymore, or did you like rework the lyrics?
No, like at the end of the day, I think that I didn't really rework anything. It's weird as like when you're doing stuff like this, the way that you present it to the world kind of means everything, especially now with social media and how everything gets perceived. So if we were having this conversation, I was like, this is a concept record, here's what it is. And everyone's going to go and listen to it from that perspective. Whereas it was more so just the way that I decided to package it and almost the way that I perceived it once it was done. I was like, oh, this isn't really this extremely cohesive story, even though there is still elements of that were carried over as I was writing it. I just realized how personal the songs were and decided to lean into that as opposed to going in the other direction.
Fair enough. Okay.
Wow.
So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process for this album?
Yeah, so for this one specifically, it was pretty awesome because we had nothing else to do. And I think that COVID and all the uncertainty that it brought, especially, I don't know how it was where you guys are at the moment, but in New Zealand, it was like very,
Chaos.
very, very hectic. Like
Mm-hmm.
you could not do anything. You were literally just locked in your house and couldn't go out, or yeah, you were allowed to go to the supermarket like once a day. It was pretty hectic. So
Mhm.
we were there, but and there was this air of uncertainty and chaos around. And in a way that kind of helped the creative process because there was it was like, I don't even know if I'm going to get to play these songs. I don't even know what's going to happen.
Oh.
I can
Yeah.
just kind of create without any bounds. And so
Mhm.
it felt kind of freeing. Whereas like, because we've already recorded the second album and
Oh,
that's
wow.
already done. And like the process for that was like so much more. I knew exactly what I wanted and it was so specific and it was like a lot more brutal. Whereas this was just, it was just kind of in a state of flow for the months that it was being written.
Do you want to go first or should I?
I know exactly what you're going to ask.
So actually, I don't think so. So you said you already recorded the second album. Did you, because you already had like 2 years, a 2-year gap in between actually having the masters for this record. In that gap of it not being out, did you also write, record, and just finish that as well? So now you just have 2 lined up to go, or what?
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
the timeline for that one? Because that's mind
I
blowing for me.
mean, that was probably lockdown number 2. So we finished number 1, came back over here, ended up getting locked down again. And then so like I was like, let's just start writing. I'm just gonna start writing again. And then almost just ignored that one. Like I was like, I know it's gonna happen at some point. So I'll just start writing again. Then we were just over in the UK because we went there to play Download Festival and like play a few festivals and stuff. And when we were there, we just locked in like as we were going over, I was like, saying to the guys and the team, like, why don't we just lock in with George, who did our last one, and just get number 2 done. And so we managed to get all those songs tied up and in the bag.
Because if you finish the album and it's done, the label has to put it out at some point.
Exactly.
There you go. They already paid for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly my thoughts. Oh.
So, what song off this album took the longest to write, and which one is your personal favorite?
Oof. I swear in every interview I give a different answer to what my personal favorite is. I definitely think that the one that took the longest to write was actually, I know that for sure because that was Medicine. And that song was initially not even a Banks Arcade song. I was writing that for like years and years ago. I wrote, well, actually, that's interesting because I guess that carries over. Yeah, it would either be Medicine or part of the stuff in Freaks, but I'll say Medicine because it was more of that whole song. Because I used to make like hip hop and like pop sort of music, produce that sort of stuff. So it was initially written. Parts of that song, parts of the hook were written ages before we ever came to the album, and then it probably took the most. Like we were at one place and we kind of collaborated with this amazing jazz pianist in Wellington, who he just came down to my family home one night. Me and the drummer from the band, James, we were in with him and we just like helped work on some little parts of it. So yeah, I think it definitely took the longest. And my favorite one is probably it would probably be Wine, which is the last song on the album. It's probably the most different from all the other songs. So I really like that one. But if it wasn't that, it would be Be Someone, because I think Be Someone was like a pivotal moment in which I first started writing from the perspective of being able to fully express myself. So it wasn't like, man, I'm writing because I'm trying to sound like this or do this or create this sound. It was like, this is exactly how I feel. I'm making music to express that exact thing, and it actually lined up for the first time. And then after that, kind of opened the floodgates. But that was a pretty special moment. So yeah, one of those two.
All right.
That's good.
So how'd the track list for the album come about? Did you guys write the opening be the opener, close be a closer? Did you shuffle around, see what fits? What was that process like?
Yeah, I usually have like the beginning and end sorted out in my head, or things that I think, oh, this is going to be like the last track, and then this is going to be the sort of start of everything, and then everything else is just a matter of finishing it off and then listening to it a whole bunch of times and seeing which works, really. So yeah, it was pretty simple for me. We just kind of sat there and just tried to figure it all out.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. So would you be able to tell us where Headspace is at while you were creating this record?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of longing and drive that I've always had when making music and trying to do this thing and working with different people and losing band members and traveling to different countries to try and get things started and kind of being knocked back. And I guess this ties into a better answer for the name of the record as well, is that I kind of felt like if this didn't do something to get it started, that this would be it. I was like, I'm writing the last, like if I don't actually start to get some traction with this, then I've got to tap out, because I've put so much money and time into trying to get to this point. Mm-hmm. And so there was definitely like that sense of ambition and hope that it was going to be something and really help us grow. And I think that there is like the good side of that, where you're like, yeah, I want to do something and I've got drive and ambition. But then there's also the negative side where that kind of turns back at you, and it's like, you're not good enough to do this, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. So definitely having to like fight through a lot of that stuff, and those thoughts and those kind of negative headspaces shaped a lot of the darker songs on the album as well. So I think it all works out in the end, I guess.
Fair enough. So how do you recommend your fans to listen to this album for the first time? Should they do it in the car with friends, in the dark with headphones on? Is it a workout album, party album? What do you personally recommend?
I definitely think that it's the type of album to lay down and just listen to in headphones if you're listening to it from the record. To be honest, the album, if you ask the best way to hear it, I think the best way to hear it is live. All of the stuff is written to be heard live. So I'll always answer that with our music specifically, because from day one of writing a song, we think about how it's going to be performed. But yeah, I think with this album, it's really good to just like lay down and digest it as a whole, because there's a lot of different stuff in there.
Fair enough.
Okay. Because you wrote this album with the context of it being, live. Do you think that limited you? Like if you're helping write like guitar or something, you're like, oh, we can't do this because I'm not able to pull this off live, or we can't do this because we don't have enough people to do this part live. Do you think that limits your writing at all, or?
Yeah, probably. But I don't think that it's necessarily a bad limitation, because it's like I think that, for example, there's something with guitars that I've always had, which is like we kind of have our guitars set up in a really specific way, where the tuning is set. And because we haven't had the finances for me to have heaps of guitars to write with, I'm like, I have to write with this, which kind of restricts what keys I can write in. And then so like I'm locked into being able to do this, and then I'm locked into certain things I had access to just because of finances or like where we're at as a band. I think that you have this idea in your head that if you had unlimited resources and you were able to do all of these things and that not have those kind of constraints, that you would make something so much better. But I think quite often that when bands do that, they kind of get paralyzed by all of the options.
Yeah. And
it can make it harder. So yeah, I think that it definitely does put limitations on, and maybe in future those limitations won't be there, or they will change. But yeah, I think it ends up being a good thing.
Yeah, and in the same like thing, it's like you don't want to write music that you're not capable of playing live, because then you've got this sick album, but like you can't translate that into a live setting. Like you're relying solely on backing tracks at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think especially with vocals in this genre, that's something that's happened a lot in the past, and I'm always disappointed. And vice on the other side, I'm always extremely excited when I see a band that I love, and then the vocalist can nail everything live and comfortably. Like as a vocalist, I hate watching a vocalist like I'm like, bro, you're gonna fucking
Blow your
go
voice
go
out.
backstage and
Yeah.
like cry because I can
Yeah.
tell you're straining so hard, and I'm like, I can't enjoy it anymore, even if it is on, because I'm like, this person is not like the. So I think if you write here and then your performing levels here, you're always going to be able to do this comfortably. But a lot of people like writing here and their performance level is here, so they're always having to try and hit it.
Yeah.
And we were definitely there for a long time. Like I was doing that, like writing stuff that it was very hard for me to do, and then now it's starting to kind of level out, which is good.
That's good. That's good.
That's very good. So this one should be super, super quick off the top of your head. I want you to describe this album for new listeners in 3 words, no more, no less.
Eclectic,
Mhm.
chaotic,
Mhm.
hopeful. That's what I'll
There you
say.
go.
That's good. All right.
I hate those type of questions.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I always say that I always give an answer, and then I'm like, I'll think about it all day and be like, man, maybe this was the right answer for that question.
You can DM us later, and we'll just sticky it like right over your face. This is what he meant to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in that same train of thought, but with not as much pressure, is there a certain feeling or emotion you want your listeners to have while going through the album?
Yeah, I think that there's lots of. Look, I'll say this. I don't necessarily think I want someone to feel exactly this way when I look at the album as a whole. I just think I want someone to feel like I really just want to invoke emotion when people listen to music. That's what I love about listening to music when I'm listening to something. And I get so excited if I'm listening to something that I really love. Like I'll get so hyped when I'm hearing it for the first time. And some of those experiences that I've had, I'm like, man, I just want to make something that makes someone else feel like this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a different emotion altogether. Like even if it's the saddest song ever, and it's just like fucking destroying you, you're still sitting there like loving it in a way because it's just making you be like, fuck. What?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the thing. I just want people to have that sort of a moment. I guess the thing that I don't like what I always want to avoid is someone listening to it and just being like, yeah, whatever, it's not bad. I would rather someone hate it than like just not be interested in it. Like they're just like, yeah. But if they're like, nah, fuck this album, I'd be like, yeah, thank you. Like,
because at least you felt something then. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's obviously done something there. But yeah, I definitely think that like from song to song, there's definitely intention behind like I want them to feel this way at this point. And yeah, I think I'll let the album speak for itself on that front.
Fair enough.
Oh, okay, perfect. So what is your favorite memory that you made while creating this record?
Favorite memory that I made? There were definitely a couple. I think in the actual recording process itself, when we recorded "Don't Start," it was the engineer who we've worked with in New Zealand for ages, and I've worked with on previous projects as well. Rich Bryan, he's the man, and he was there, and it was his birthday. And when we work in the studio with him, like, by the way, we recorded the whole album in 8 days and then shot the videos after the 8 days. So like in the 3 days after we shot the video, the music video, the 3 days after we had recorded the whole album, we did all the videos. So it was in 11 days, we had all the content for the album pretty much done.
Dude, what?
And so it was, and Rich works ridiculous hours because I go crazy and I'm like, man, let's just stay up. Like we did an EP in like 50 hours and I just think we didn't sleep, and we just like did our first EP just like 3 days back to back. And so I was like, are you ready to do this for an album? And he was like, yeah. And then anyway, it was his birthday while we were in the studio, and we went out and got him a bunch of drinks and a bunch of treats and all sorts of nice fun things, and everyone had all these party hats, And then as it hit midnight and I was recording, we had already started getting everyone fucked up. And no one really knew why, because we'd just been working so hard, but everybody was like, and we were getting him the most fucked up. And he's like at the desk. And then at midnight, we came in with a cake and all these party hats. And then we just kept doing takes through the night, but it was like a birthday party for him because he had to pretty much miss out on his birthday. And that was pretty wholesome and fun. So yeah, I think that's definitely one of the best memories.
All right.
That sounds like so much fun.
You we were starting to wrap this up and you opened up a whole new can of worms by being like, oh yeah, by the way, 11 days, everything was done. So I know you said the producer, he works ridiculous hours. Were you shooting the music videos to mixes, or were they fully mastered tracks that you were shooting them to?
No. They weren't fully mastered. We were shooting them to demos, I think, even.
Oh. So were the demos then pretty much fully realized versions of what the song that you recorded was?
99% of for this album, yes, pretty much. I just make all the demos in my bedroom and then send them off to the guys, and we kind of shape them and everything. But it's pretty accurate in terms of how everything was. Obviously we added a lot or took a lot away, but in terms of really the only thing that matters in music videos is timing and that the vocals are the same, because if the vocals have changed, then you're kind of fucked. But yeah, I think it was crazy. Part of why we did it so quick is because one, we funded the whole album ourselves at this point because we weren't signed, so we were we've got to figure out a way to pay for this. And then two, New Zealand was locking down every other week, way into this process. So we literally didn't know if we were going to be able to get into Auckland. We were we're just going to start driving, because if you got in before the lockdown curfew, we were we can just lock down in the studio.
Fair enough.
So we had this kind of window to smash it out, and yeah, there's not too many people who could do it like that, like Rich did. If you asked most engineers to do that, they would just be like, no. So you definitely owe a lot to that guy.
Hell yeah. So picture this: you're on tour, you're at a gas station for a rest stop. What is your snack of choice?
Oh, at the moment, it is over here they have these Caesar salad wraps, and I've been getting those at all of the gas stations. The other guys in the band have very heinous snacking habits, I would say. Well, not Jason, but Harlan and James just get the weirdest shit. They always try to find the most disgusting flavors of chips, so that potato chips, as you guys would call them. Fucking, they will get I think the other day they had a tomato sauce and jalapeno flavored.
That
chip.
sounds kind of banging.
That sounds. I'd try
it. They will literally try any flavor of chips, so they always come back with all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, I'm the same way, because I look at the chip selection, I'm well, I've already had all these, so I'm all right, what's the weirdest fucking thing that I can try? Even if it sucks, God. I'll also buy the backup flavor that I always enjoy, but I'm I gotta try the new one, because I gotta know.
This is what they do. See, you're the same as them.
Yeah. So on the topic of food, if the band was a dish, what dish would the band be and why?
Oh man, if the band was a dish. I feel like we would all be very different dishes. We would probably be a buffet.
Oh, okay. All right.
Different things. Now I can imagine there being some kind of I'm going to say that if the band was a dish, we would be a roast dinner, a roast lamb with some nice roast vegetables, maybe a side salad, and a very weird starter, but I'd say guacamole and chips to start, which almost doesn't sound like it goes with a roast dinner, but I feel that's what our dinner would be. And I feel I'm trying to represent everyone accurately here so that they don't rage out at me if they saw this, but I would say that all of us could meet in the middle of the Venn diagram at a roast dinner and some chips and guac.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Fair enough.
I'll take it.
So for the last couple questions, we're going to shift completely away from music and go straight to death row.
Boom.
So if you're on death row, what would your last meal be with a drink?
Oh, my last meal. I would, you know what? If I was about to die, I'd probably go for something very, very simple. I'd probably just get macaroni and cheese and a steak.
Ooh.
Okay.
With a nice salad. And for my drink, I would have a Negroni, which is a cocktail. I don't know if you guys have had a Negroni before, but that's my favorite cocktail.
I haven't had it, but heard of it.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very like pop. I hadn't even heard of it till I came to Melbourne, and then like all the bars have it here, and it's like a very bitter kind of orangey flavored cocktail, and I love it. So I'd probably have that, bit of mac and cheese and some steak.
Nice.
That sounds perfect. So, if you could live in one fictional world for a week, where would you live?
I would have to say that I would go. I'm trying to think of something that I've watched recently, which I would really want to go there. I would want to go to some place where there was magic and shit, and where I could be like where I could like fight people with swords. So some like Game of Thrones type world or something like that. Like, so just anywhere where there's like a bit of magic and I can carry a sword around for a week. I'll be pretty stoked on that.
All right.
That'd be pretty cool.
So I have the honor of asking the last question, and every single person that we've spoken to have said that this is the most important question. What's your favorite color?
My favorite color. I'm gonna say black. Is that a color, or am I copping up by saying that? Do I have to give a different answer?
I'd love to hear a backup answer, but we'll take black.
Okay, I would say that blue, and I don't even know. I don't get this whole favorite color thing. This has perplexed my brain for my whole life because I like all of the colors. I love all of them, and I like look at them. But if I'm ever asked, the color blue just comes into my mind. So that's the answer I have to give.
Okay. Fair enough.
Blue's great.
So as I said, that's all the questions we have today. Is there anything that you would like to plug?
No, we're going over to New Zealand to do our headline tour in about 2 weeks, and then we're back on the road in Oz with a big 60-date tour with In Heart's Wake. Obviously, the album comes out in about a week, and hopefully we'll be over on American shores shortly, so we'll be able to see you guys soon.
Oh, hell
That'd
yeah.
be so sick.
All right. Well, thank you for now. That's been Joshua from Banks Arcade, and we have been the Good Noise Podcast.